Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Get in the Herd After Hours. After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Bond. I am a peer leader, administrative assistant, and recovery coach at the McShin Foundation, as well as a house leader, and more importantly, a person in recovery from substance use disorder, which means I have not found the need to put any mood or mind-altering substances in my body for over 11 months now. Today, I've got Mike, Debbie, and Beth on with me. How are we doing, guys?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Happy to have you on. Definitely. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself to those who do not know you?
Well, I'm going to try to get up on my microphone here because, we said we were. But no, I'm Mike Todd. I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is I can be a husband and a father and a grandfather today. And I'm also executive director of Freedom Recovery Center and a state lead for Recovery Advocacy Project, which I'm always excited about.
Yeah. We were just talking about that with Johnny and Joanna the other day. So thank you very much for that. Debbie, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name's Debbie Fling, and I'm in Maryland. I originally got started advocating with Maryland Heroin Awareness Advocates after I decided that with both of my sons having addiction issues and becoming incarcerated, I decided I needed to figure out what the solution was rather than be part of the problem. So I started researching and looking into organizations and groups, and I met a group of amazing women, and we all kind of got together, and that's where Maryland Heroin Awareness Advocates, Karen Miller, Beth Schmidt, Ginger Moreland, just a whole Lynn Miller. There was a lot of women that put a lot of effort, a lot of moms, because we were tired of losing our kids or chasing our kids. So through that, I also advocate with Justice and Recovery Advocates for those incarcerated, the families that need help. I run 2 support groups, Justice and Recovery Advocates and Save Our Children through Washington County, and also got involved with Project Act Now through the Health Department, which opened a lot of doors and a lot of resources. So that's kind of a little bit about what I do.
It's wonderful work you do, and we're very happy to have you on. Beth, Why don't you introduce yourself to the crowd?
So, hi, my name is Beth Schmidt, and I also got involved with Maryland Heroin Awareness Advocates with Debbie Fling and a couple of other moms. We started the group because we were sick and tired of losing our children and not having anybody to talk to about it. I lost my eldest son, Sean, to an overdose almost 7 years ago. I didn't have anybody to go to. I didn't have anybody to talk to. And started fighting the stigma of addiction while he was still battling his addiction. After losing him, I had more answers than I had questions. And when he was battling his addiction, I had more questions than I had answers. So I decided that I needed to become his voice and the voice of anybody else that we have lost. So I advocate through Maryland Heroin Awareness Advocates. We help people get into long-term recovery. We help them get into sober living directly from jail or directly from a treatment facility, because again, you walk out the door with absolutely nothing, and you've burned a lot of bridges, and we're there to help mend those bridges. And then I also work as a family peer support specialist for Maryland Coalition of Families. So I work to help support families that are dealing with loved ones that have substance use disorder, and I also run several support groups for parents that have lost children to overdose.
We really appreciate having you on. It takes a lot of courage and for sharing your story, both of you ladies. I really appreciate it. Mike, I guess just to start off, what's your experience in dealing with the jail piece, the incarceration? Have you been to jail? Have you wished that there were more people advocating for it? I mean, these I hear it in both these two ladies' advocacy pieces. How does that fit in the picture to what you're kind of working with?
Well, I mean, like we were talking about last time, I mean, what we're doing at Freedom Recovery Center is we're working with indigent guys, and we're able to take them in, provide housing, provide transportation while they are in with the county Drug and Alcohol Commission. So, and I'm also working with our Sheriff Lewis. Thank God we've got a new sheriff, and I've been working with him. We're looking at some jail diversion things, but yeah, definitely a big piece. I have never been to prison. My experience was with my father. My father was in and out of prison, and I'll just say this real quick. He suffered from mental illness, post-traumatic stress disorder. He suffered from substance use disorder. He found his uncle and his dad dead in the same summer, and he never had an opportunity to work on those things. All I saw him ever get was incarceration, and things really haven't changed a whole lot since then, So I really, really appreciate what these ladies are doing, and my heart goes out to parents as we go into tomorrow. And I would like to say this real quick. I have a son who's struggling, and he's 31 years old, and so I'm right here with you guys. So, but thank you so much, both of you. It's an honor to be on here with you.
I really appreciate you saying that. I didn't know that, Mike. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, buddy. Debbie, what's like the number one? So you deal with a lot of reentry into society, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What would you say is the hardest piece of getting people re-entered into society from being incarcerated?
Hands down, it's finding housing. Trying to find housing for them. That is our number one biggest challenge right now. And we actually just recently hired a couple of folks to help us out. And one of the research projects is to call, within surrounding counties, just get, as much information through all of the housing authorities and the shelters and, everywhere we can, because we've had, even more recently, we've had, where we get a call that there's a young man with children, and trying to get their kids back. So we don't, we're scrambling at the last minute. So that's probably that, and then getting them into mental health, which typically they come out and they have the, the state insurance, the Medicaid. So, or at least we can get them set up if they don't right away, but getting them an appointment, because there's usually a long wait. So those two things are key. And, Mike, you can probably attest to this, and maybe you too, Alex. We know that spiral starts as soon as they walk out the door. That's it. And like Beth said earlier, we try to get them into long-term treatment or any kind of treatment. I always joke around. Don't call me on a Thursday night or a Friday. We're not. It's not. Can you call me on a Monday? We know it doesn't work like that. But that's usually what happens, and then we have them on the street again. So that's probably the number one issue that we have right now, Alex.
Definitely. And Beth, I saw you nod really hard when she was talking about getting the appointments set up, because and Debbie Rosenbaum's got a good point here, a warm handoff. What I'm trying to get into, phrase it as a question. The urgency and the sense of urgency is very lackluster, especially in hospitals. And when it comes to these warm handoffs and getting people in the door as quick as possible, how do we change that? How can we fix that? Because, as soon as someone comes into a hospital, they treat them, when they can, which usually can take, as Debbie was explaining, I've seen people have to wait 10 days just to get an appointment to get on Suboxone or something like that. So how can we get around that?
I wish that I had the answer to that, because I can tell you, for a mental health appointment, you're talking 4 months wait, 6 month wait. Even if you have private insurance, it's a 6 month wait to get a mental health appointment. So somehow we have to be able to fix that. We have to be able to fix the urgency behind it. And then instead of looking afterwards and going, well, how could we have fixed this? All these things have now gone wrong. We had somebody here in Maryland, a couple jumping off the Bay Bridge. And I'm sure that everybody's going to look back and go, well, how could we have, where did they slip through the cracks? Instead of looking and seeing, how did they slip through the cracks? Let's fill those cracks. But honestly, I don't know how to do it. We've been trying to do it for a very, very long time. And as I said, that spiral starts as soon as somebody gets out of incarceration. When my son was in jail, they didn't want to give him any help when he walked out the door. I picked him up, and there was no piece of paper. There was just, you have to report to probation in 72 hours. It was, no, this is your probation officer. This is even the county that they're in. We lived in one county. The crime was in another. And it was just, it was nuts. And he looked at me and he said, do you see how people end up back in jail, Mom, right away? Mm-hmm. I said, absolutely, I do. So, those are the kinds of things that we help with. We go down to Annapolis every year and we testify on different bills, and we do the best that we can to try to get different bills passed as they come up. We will go down and we will talk about them. And I can tell you, as a mom that's lost a child, I've come across some other moms that have lost children that think that I've lost my mind when I go up against certain bills, or I go and I want a certain bill passed. But if we don't help people and meet them where they're at, then they're just going to end up back into the system, or we're going to end up losing them.
Mm-hmm. No, you're totally right. And you brought up a good thing when it comes to the advocacy piece and the bills. Mike, I've had to deal with this personally. Advocating when I got 3 different bills that are in front of me. This happened this last General Assembly. One of them was a Good Samaritan law. One was, urgent same day treatment, and one was Danny's law. And a lot of the politicians that I spoke with said, all right, are you asking me for all 3 of these? Because I can't give you all 3 of these. How do you pick and choose? What do you do in that scenario when you're trying to get all? Yeah, I know. It's like you have to almost pick your battles on which one is the best one.
You go back next year for the next one.
Yeah. So is that what we got to do?
Man, let me tell you something. Welcome, South Carolina. Oh my gosh! And you sat here with Rich Jones and I.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on in Maryland. I have to think that it's better, but right now fentanyl strips. Still outlawed. It's against the law in South Carolina to give out fentanyl strips. Clean needles, totally against the law. Even intramuscular naloxone is against the law in South Carolina. So, I mean, these are the issues. I see you guys are shaking your head. I mean, that's what we're up against in South Carolina. We just now, in the last couple of years, got community naloxone, and it has to be the nasal form. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, it's $75 a pop. And I'm a community distributor. Okay, I get it from the state. But man, if we could give out intermuscular, you guys know we can get that for a couple of dollars a pop. And really, I mean, with South Carolina, I mean, in last year, our county here in Greenville County, there was an 80% increase in drug overdoses in Greenville County where I live. I mean, so it's very frustrating. So what we're doing with the Recovery Advocacy Project, the first and foremost thing we're doing right now is we're trying to get in front of that opioid subcommittee to literally educate them. I mean, but we're in a very, very conservative state. So like Maryland, love you, man. We're behind you. I don't know. It's very frustrating. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yeah, I know I can, at least, and the frustration, can be suffocating at times. But I think, as Beth and Debbie and you yourself were saying, Mike, you got to pick one and then come after the next one next year. I think that's what you said, Beth, and it's kind of like a tough reality, but infrastructural change doesn't happen overnight. Debbie, you have a lot of familiarity with that infrastructure, societal incarceration piece. So how do you tackle the beast? Like, I think someone said the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. Is that kind of the tactic, or is it just kind of like help the person suffering from the infrastructure? Can we do both, or
it's all the above? Yeah, you have to help them. I mean, you have to help them. That's key. That's number one. We're very fortunate that we do have some sober living homes here in Maryland that, we pretty much can pick up the phone and call somebody, and they're going to do everything that they can, to try to get them in. Again, we get those calls on Thursday night, Friday night, and it's like, oh, please, but typically, we've got some great folks out here. Now, as far as legislators, it is pick one, and you got to have your ducks in a row. So yeah, you have to tackle all the above. And, Beth can tell you there's advocacy days, that there's a lot of planning that goes into. You go down and you kind of talk to them and, find out who's, in what seat and, what you think will fly before you ever get there. And to pick one is it's grueling. I mean, we've had these go rounds before, and we've actually had, senators say, choose one. That's it. So, we have to do it all, Alex. I mean, there is no cut and dried. I know Beth and I have had multiple conversations along with all the other advocates out here. We get calls in the middle of the night. We'll wake up, our messenger will be blowing up. And, my family sometimes gets frustrated with me, not my husband, God love him. I mean, he's just used to it. But, my sisters, God love them, all in South Carolina, they might be watching, I don't know. But they're like, when are you going to stop? And it's like, how do you stop? I mean, a life can be saved. And I can tell you right now, I mean, I've got, and I'm sure Mike, you too, and Beth, and all of us, we've got a laundry list of, that kids that see you and grab you and hug you and kiss you and tell you how much they love you because, basically, these kids had nowhere to go. They were on, when they say, I need help, they need help, they need help now. They're not going to get them tomorrow. So, we do the best that we can.
Yeah, it's definitely imperative. And I guess kind of what I was sadly pragmatically saying is that everything is imperative. So all of the harm reduction, the education, the awareness piece. Beth, I'm pretty sure if I read correctly, you've been working with schools a lot in that education piece. Is that correct?
So I am a Good Samaritan ambassador for the state of Maryland through Maryland Coalition of Families. But before that, I was part of one of our co-founders, late Ginger Rosella. She was able to make some changes, and we got some changes made to the Maryland Good Samaritan law. And since then, we go in and we talk to whomever will listen, and we'll talk to people that won't even listen, actually. But now through Maryland Coalition of Families, I am a Good Sam ambassador, and I will go and talk about it all the time, because the people that were with my son did not make the phone call when they needed to. They drove around with him for a long time. Now, this was when fentanyl first hit Maryland. So this was almost 7 years ago. They had no idea. His was 100% pure fentanyl. So there was nobody saving him. Even if they had naloxone sitting next to him, it wasn't going to help. But they didn't know that. And they drove around with him for a while. And we have that happen all the time. And we need people to know it is safe to pick up the phone, make that phone call, and save somebody's life. So luckily, I was a school bus aide for a special needs bus, and I had friends in the school system, and I was able to get into some of the health classes as a guest speaker. We tried at the very highest level, and parents wanted to shut us down, and administration wanted to shut us down, because it was too much of a system change. But if I come in as a guest speaker, and so as I went into each school, then another school would invite me, and another school would invite me. What I had to share was scary, yes, but it was truthful. This wasn't the girl that was in California that nobody knew. This was the boy that was on the same Sykesville baseball field that these kids were on. I was able to go into my son's high school and my son's middle school. And so they knew him. They knew this could happen to anybody. And so that's a huge thing, because parents think, we don't want you going in there and teaching our kids about this because this is what they're going to do. And honestly, your kids already know about it. It's the parents that we need to let you know what your kids know and what they're dealing with, and what they're trying to have coping skills to be able to get around.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of pushback when you're trying to educate? I mean, I've heard different people say different things, and it's really dependent on, I guess, the schools a lot of times, but a lot of them have said, I don't want to hear any of it. Like, what?
In the very beginning, we had a lot, and that's not here. And the only way I could get through to parents' heads were, my son was the 13th child in 13 months in our little town between two high schools to die. We lost one child a month for 13 months right after they graduated. And so because they had younger siblings in those schools, and I kept saying, we just lost another Century High School student, we just lost another Liberty High School student, they started paying attention. And that was the biggest thing, because I was like, this isn't like sex education. You're not going to show them a condom and they're going to want to have sex. You're not going to show them a needle and they're going to look at somebody in recovery and go, oh, well, look, they only had to, live on the streets for 2 years and then go in and out of treatment for another 2 years. 4 years later, I can have this down. That'll be good. It's not that way. But parents were looking at it like, don't tell them that this drug is out there. Where I was looking at it like, why didn't you tell me that a pill addiction could have led to heroin? That's
Sure.
what our kids need to know. So that's what I go in and I talk about. Safe ways to advocate for yourself, safe ways to be able to take those prescription drugs, how to know when it's working on your brain and no longer working on the pain, ways to talk to your parents about it, ways to talk to your doctors and say, I can do this with, Tylenol. I can do this with ibuprofen. I can do this with rest. Your body's going to hurt. You don't always have to feel at 100%. Pain can be good sometimes. It tells us when to stop. So
yeah, especially not everything has to be numbed. I mean, like the fact that I know so many people personally who have started with, a torn ACL, and then it's years later, homeless shooting heroin. I mean, that's just how it works sometimes. I'm not going to say every single time, but some people who have that genetic, substance use disorder disposition, that's where things turn out, is that easy access and the lack of education and knowledge. I'm going to go back to some of these questions that have popped up in the meantime. Mike, Kelly had a question. If you found an effective way to get members of your community who may not be personally affected to help drive your mission in the legislative?
Well, you know what? I just want to share what happened in Greenville, South Carolina this weekend. I am so full of gratitude, and I mean, and I want to just like give both of y'all a virtual hug because your work is amazing. But we actually had, this is Greenville, South Carolina, man, deep South. We had an overdose awareness day Friday night. We got on this like 2 weeks in advance. A parent called me up and said, "Hey, will you help me with this?" And I'm like, absolutely. And I thought, man, there's going to be maybe 30 or 40 people. That's what I thought. And we got there, and there was a few people mingling around, and the next thing you know, man, I grabbed my bullhorn, and we get this thing going. And I look back, and the reason I know, my wife kind of counted everybody afterwards. There were 150 people that showed up in Greenville, South Carolina, y'all.
That's awesome.
These parents and these kids. I'm sorry, I get a little bit. And here's the other cool thing. We gave out Narcan. We gave out intramuscular Narcan on Main Street, Greenville, South Carolina. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to push and push and push. And we're going to have that watershed moment. We are going to have that watershed moment just like they had with AIDS, because I'm an 80s baby. Okay. Mm-hmm. AIDS was not my problem. It was a homosexual problem. And then all of a sudden, we realized as a community that it was our problem. And then we started using harm reduction. Like like we started using condoms. And I think that's the problem here, is that somehow we've got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing so that people realize, because what I hear people say is, I don't have this problem.
Yes,
I was actually on a call with a lady from our state, and she wasn't involved with the state. She was just doing the meeting or whatever. They called her as an outside consultant. And she said a few times, "Well, I don't have this problem." And I said, that in itself is the problem. Because, I don't think that everybody realizes Alex, when you start talking about it starts with a torn ACL or whatever. Everybody is that close to it being their problem. Mm-hmm. It is not. It is a problem. Period. But anyway,
Well, it's not a problem if it's your family member's problem and you have no idea either. It's kind of like the dust bunny under the rug isn't my problem until someone moves the bed.
Yeah, exactly. And but like I said, it was just amazing. And it's time. It's absolutely time. And South Carolina is ready for harm reduction. We're ready for it. But I was so proud, and I was so pumped up. I didn't hardly sleep, Friday night, and I was able to hold my picture of some friends and a lot of friends that I've lost. And of course, my son is all the way in Los Angeles. He was on the streets of Los Angeles the last time we heard, but now I kind of understanding he's involved with a church or whatever. But one day at a time with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just keep fighting your battle, brother.
Yeah.
And congratulations on the walk. It sounds like a great success. We need more stuff like that. Debbie and Beth, Debbie Rosenbaum had a question for you. You two being from Maryland, do they have regulations for their sober living homes, and kind of what are those specifically? Because I know VAR works with us here in Virginia. I was just she was wondering, and myself as well, we're wondering what those regulations kind of look like.
there are regulations, and the sober living home owners have to jump through a lot of hoops. I don't know the specific regulations. Beth, maybe you can speak on that.
So we have some that are certified and some that are not certified. A lot of times people look at an uncertified house and think, well, that's just got to be a dump. That's going to be a place that's not going to take care of somebody. But unfortunately, if you have a certified home, you have to take somebody who is on medically assisted treatment. And there's a little bit of a divide when it comes to the recovery community, when it comes to medically assisted treatment. So everybody wants every house to take medically assisted treatment. My son tried Suboxone. It didn't work. He didn't want to use it. He found a way to divert it. It just wasn't for him. I know plenty of people that it works wonderful for. He didn't want to go onto a methadone program, and he took Vivitrol for a while, which worked wonderfully, and Sublocade wasn't available yet. However, there are some people that could see other people on Sublocade. They could see other people on Suboxone because they knew that they had diverted it before, and that could be a trigger for them. So we do need to have homes for people that want to be completely abstinent. There is a reason that, we have to have places like that. But unfortunately, a lot of those places are, people will bully them and be like, well, you're the place that doesn't accept medically assisted treatment. But much like you don't want to shove somebody into an abstinence program that needs medically assisted treatment, you also don't want to shove somebody who needs medically assisted treatment, or, you don't want to do vice versa. So there are regulations.
It's like the stigma inside the stigma. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people shape their opinions on how people want to recover. And I frankly could say, if your program is your program, as long as you're attempting some sort of recovery. Not to cut you off, that gets me fired up.
No, believe me, absolutely. So there are regulations. There's a bunch of different places that will certify, but we need more. We need more homes. We need more homes for pregnant women, for women with children, and as Debbie stated, we need homes for men with children. It's not just women with children. We have a lot of kids that are being raised by grandparents because there is no place for the kids to go. Parents are incarcerated. Parents have, they've lost their parents, or they're in recovery. And a lot of times they'll push them through. The courts will push them through. Well, if you want to get your kids back, you have to be out of sober living. That's ridiculous. If you're not ready to come out of sober living, why are we going to push somebody into the regular streamline if they're not ready and they have children to take care of? So we need more places that will take families, really.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, Debbie, you mentioned Carlia has been really, really big on that piece of involving, not just the, single addict or the lone addict. I don't know exactly how else to phrase that. It's not exactly the most politically.
Carlia has the House for Women and Children, and she also has taken another step too, and has brought in programs, into the home. So some of the stuff that we do with Justice and Recovery, Julie Major started Justice and Recovery and Advocates, and so we do. As I mentioned earlier, a wellness program, that includes nutrition, wellness, yoga, just the whole gambit. So, that it's like a 12-week program. So there's, a whole lot of different moving parts that go along with that. So, she's offering the whole gambit, in the homes, and helping the women get more acclimated to, getting their children back.
And I can't say it enough that a 12-week program is way better than a 4-week program. A lot of models are still stuck on kind of like the 28-day and the 90-day, 90 meetings in 90 days, whatever it is. I've just found and read a lot stating that 90 days is such a more accurate marker at the end of the day, which I think we could all be a little more progressive on. Mike, Carol had a question earlier about, let me see, I want to make sure. Is Freedom Recovery Center located in places beyond Greenville? If you could talk about that.
No, we're just in Greenville, South Carolina. We house and you know, and I want to speak to the medically assisted treatment because, and really, I think we should see it just as treatment because,
Yes.
you know, that's what it is. But and of course, we don't have regulations here, but I helped start an organization to bring standards and ethics and accountability to recovery residences in South Carolina, and we're still trying to get the certifications thing going, but it is so hard with a volunteer army, right? But we do, and I'll speak to this because if you would have told me this a few years ago, no way in the world would I work with someone on medically assisted treatment. I was that guy. I'm old. Okay. I mean, it really, it took a lot of heart and minds a lot to change me. You know, I was that guy. I was faith based, and it was 12-step. And you ain't coming to my program unless you need to recover the same way I do. And then, you know, I started getting educated, and I think I started holding crying moms, and I remember the day I met with my director and I said, we got to start working with these guys. And he's like, what? And it was people like Rich Jones and some other people that really opened my mind and my heart up. But I've been working with that type of treatment now for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I can tell you, I have abstinent base there and this treatment there. And when done properly, this is what I heard, and this was what I kept thinking and I kept hearing was, well, you're going to have the guy nodding out and slobbering on the porch sitting by the next guy. I have not experienced, like, if you come to our program and sit out on the porch, you really don't know who's doing what. You don't know who's you know that they're going to treatment.
But it's such an overgeneralization.
Yeah, I mean, but I have guys that are, you know, totally abstinent based living together, and guys that are doing medically assisted treatment, and guys that are actually doing treatment. They're all living together and working together, and it is working well for us. And I can just tell you, we are one of the very few in South Carolina that will work with medically assisted treatment. One of the very few. There's a lot of faith-based here and stuff like that. So we just felt like, spiritually, I just felt like, you know, for me, it was kind of a spiritual thing that I just can't leave these guys out here. And so we've got and I'll say this real quick. We've been working with our county drug and alcohol commission to get these guys that are indigent or just coming out of jail or prisons or whatever, to get them in because I believe that they need treatment before we just throw them into a job. I mean, taking a guy right out of detox and sending him to the chicken farm. I mean, we've got so much of that here. So our program is, you got to do your IOP treatment or treatment. We partner with that, and then we put you in what we would call sober living. Mm-hmm. So, and it's working well. It really is.
Well, and that's what I advocate when I see a lot of people coming into this program or into recovery in general. It's not, I need to get my family back. I need to get my girl back, my son back, my daughter, my job, all this other stuff. And you can't do that successfully if you're not doing it, having recovery at the top of that list right there, followed by, in my opinion, your higher power. Yeah. And then everything else comes after that and will fall in line. Exactly. So I wanted to go back up. Of course, Johnny is totally accurate. 5 years of continuous remission meets with an 80% chance at remaining in recovery for a lifetime. I've heard that 4 years of abstaining, not using an actual good recovery is about 50-50. And then once you get 5 years, you're at 80% chance for not using for the rest of your life is also what I've heard. So big ups to Johnny there. And then he's also got an open question I'd like to kind of open to whoever, Beth, Debbie, or Mike, what needs to happen to have harm reduction embraced on a national level? If anyone could take that.
Who wants it?
So I'm just going to start real quick, and I will
Please.
off of my soapbox very quickly. I was not the first one for harm reduction, especially when it came to safe consumption sites, because I wanted immediate treatment. And I was like, how can we fund one if we can't fund the other? And I was like, it's okay, we can have safe consumption if you can also fund immediate. But a lot of it's in the wording, and so much of it is stigma. You can say safe consumption site to somebody and they freak out. But if you say overdose prevention site to somebody else, they're like,
that's a great point.
Okay, that's cool. As far as the medically assisted treatment and stuff like that, you can have 3 different kinds of cancer. You're going to treat them 3 different ways. So we can't expect everybody to be treated exactly the same way. But this all stems from stigma. If we can get rid of the stigma, then, and that's what happened with AIDS, there was a stigma that was attached to it. There was a stigma attached to cancer when people used to think that you could catch cancer from somebody. So if we can get past that stigma and get people to realize, like you said, Alex, before, like you said, Mike, whether you think it affects you or not, it does affect you. It's the grocery store worker, it's your kid's teacher, it's somebody. And if you don't have it personally affecting your immediate family, well, more power to you. But you're rare. So it is going to affect you eventually. So I'm going to jump back off of that because it's all stigma. We can get rid of that. We can move on.
And I real quick just have to follow up with an anecdote. So I think it was last week I got a phone call here, and they said, yeah, so we're wondering what this is. We see one of your houses. It's in this neighborhood. And I explained to them, we're a recovery residential house. It's essentially a house full of 20 gentlemen who are all trying to recover from their substance use disorder. And he said, why aren't you guys like 100 yards from a jail? I can't imagine why you guys would be close to children. And then I explained to him, we operate out of a church where the other half of the church is a daycare. So I think what you're trying to generalize is a bit misguided, my friend. So I mean, of course, it was like a 30-minute conversation where I was trying to educate this guy, and he kind of got maybe like 20% of what I was saying, which is better than 0. But that is still like I'd experienced it a little bit, but not like actually being in recovery, like on the job working and trying to like deal with that on the phone. Debbie, have you had any similar experiences? And what else do you think needs to happen to have harm reduction embraced on a national level?
We're really fortunate in the state of Maryland in comparison to other states. I'm not saying that we're doing, a knockout job, but we're really fortunate here, and our harm reduction folks are really out there. I mean, literally, I'm in Washington County, Maryland, and we've got a phenomenal harm reduction team. Mike, if you ever want to give them a call, I'm sure they would speak with you. But and I know other counties that do as well. Baltimore, they've got a phenomenal harm reduction team. But you're going to have to go nationwide. You're going to have to get these legislators on board, and that's what it's going to take. Is going to be collaboration, and we just fight to go county by county, state by state right now. They don't want to go nationwide. People don't want anything to do with nationwide. They want you to start including, when you hear this president, former presidents, that it has to start in your county, then your state, and it has to go like that. And we haven't gotten past that. We're not anywhere close to that. Like Beth said, it's the stigma that's attached. We have a legislator here in Washington County that literally went to the county commissioners and dumped out a bag full of harm reduction, supplies and said, this is what we're doing. This is what we're handing out on the street. We're enabling, people, to actually use. And so once again, until, then the harm reduction had to get together and they had to go sit before them. So even in a county that's as progressed as we are, in a state that's as progressed as we are, going nationwide, everybody on this panel right now would love nothing more, but I just don't see that we're anywhere close to that yet.
Yeah, absolutely, baby steps, and like again, Johnny came correct saying bars are safe consumption sites, and Beth, I think you were very accurate in the wordage of things. A safe consumption site sounds a lot scarier than an overdose reduction site. Just as much as and we don't have to go completely on this, but decriminalization sounds a lot scarier than reclassification. I mean, it's something as small as people hijacking taboo buzzwords and things like that. Mike, you want to throw in your opinion here?
I believe I agree with these ladies. It's gonna have to be done. We're gonna have to do what we're doing right here. You know, we're gonna have to create our own platforms. We're gonna have to get in our communities. It's just like it's bit by bit. That's why I was so encouraged about what happened in Greenville Friday night. I mean, to look back and see guys with backpacks handing out Narcan all over the place, I was just like, I mean, you have to realize, man, this is Greenville, South Carolina, Bob Jones University. I mean, it's like one of the most conservative places in the country. And, you know, but I think that's exactly what we're going to have to do is just really get on our, because look, and we in South Carolina, every election, state election for House, Senate. Listen, I'm a Christian. I don't want to try to, but that you got two Republicans trying to out Christian each other and trying to out gun each other and anti-abortion. That's not going anywhere in South Carolina. So we've got to create our own NRA and our own anti-abortion rights or whatever. We've got to create our own lobbies, and and I'm telling you, we're making some progress in South Carolina because we've got the South Carolina Recovery Advocacy Project, but you know, our state agency is actually meeting with us and bringing some of us to the table and listening to some of us that are on the ground, and actually starting to kind of practice just a little bit, nothing about us without us. Because look, here's what we got to think about. Would it make any sense whatsoever to be talking about legislation for minorities, people with disabilities, even with animal cruelty, without having people in the room to represent them? That's what we're faced with. I mean, I know we are in South Carolina. Like, they're meeting in Columbia all the time about us, and we don't have a voice at all. But I'm telling you, that's changing real quick. I was on some calls last week with the Department of Alcohol and other drug abuse services, and I mean, we've just got to start getting bold. I'm old. I've gotten to the point where I don't care. I'll carry a bullhorn. I'll get real loud.
Bullhorn Mike.
Bullhorn Mike. I got it right behind me. I mean, whatever we've got to do, and you mentioned it, Alex. I mean, we've got to take. It's an elephant, and we've got to take a bite at the time. But we're going to have that. We're going to have to follow politicians around and heckle them if we have to. You know, and I mean, Beth and Debbie probably remember when AIDS had that turnaround, when Bill Clinton said, you know, when that guy yelled out and said, "What are you going to do about AIDS?" And Bill Clinton stopped and he said, "I feel your pain." And that was that watershed moment, man. We've got to keep pushing for that watershed moment. This is not a mainstream issue yet. It has got to become a mainstream issue, and we've got to keep pushing our asses off until it becomes a mainstream kitchen table issue. Oops. Thank you. I'm sorry. I get a little.
No, absolutely. And I don't.
Amen.
We all do. Yeah.
I don't think that people need to, like, with no disrespect to our allies Debbie and Beth here,
Yeah,
people shouldn't have to wait until their son passes away from this problem.
that's right.
And it absolutely sucks that I don't know, that people are still on the wrong side of this, and that there are myths like, how can you be around children? Or just as if continuing the AIDS comparison, I remember when I was like in elementary school, they were saying you can't swim in a pool with someone with AIDS, or these ridiculous myths that have to continuously be dispelled.
Beth fell out. I mean, I don't know if we can get her back in. She froze up and then she fell. But I don't want. But I do want to mention, like with my son. I mean, in South Carolina, where and I mean, thank God, I think he's had a couple of overdoses and survived. His drug of choice was meth. I mean, and Debbie, you can. I know you know what I'm talking about. I mean, the only thing we could do, we'd take him to the hospital, and he may get like 12 hours. I mean, sometimes he wouldn't even get 24 hours, and they'd throw him back on the street, man.
Yeah.
I mean, my son never really got a chance. I mean, we did everything we have, and we're continuing to do everything we can do. But it was just so frustrating and heartbreaking to go through that. And he's kind of found his recovery, and it doesn't. And you know what? It doesn't look like mine, or I had,
That's
because
the thing.
yeah,
They're all different.
Exactly. I thought, man, I've been in recovery for a good while here, and I can fix this. And no, I found out that I couldn't, and I needed it. My wife and I literally had to reach out to people like Debbie and other parents, because it started kicking my tail. I mean, it was one of the hardest things, and still continues to be one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through, is watching my son suffer from substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Beth.
Not easy. Beth, happy to have you back.
That was awful.
No, it's all right. It happens. And so Diane has the biggest question that there is. So what's the solution? Like, I have a son in the midst of this all, is kind of what she's saying. So like, on behalf of, the parents and the mothers and all three of your situation, I have a son, but he's 3.5. And all of you have more experience with being parents of
Keep him 3.5. That's my advice.
Yeah, I'll
let him grow up.
Sprinkle some magic dust on him or something. So what sort of advice do you have to parents of children in recovery or in active addiction at this point?
Open communication.
Definitely.
That's
and listen to them. Yeah. You have to hear what they're saying. You have to hear them. You have to read their language. You have to understand, we chase them. We chase our addicts, and we want them to want it as much as we want it. Mine's turning 45 and 38, and that we have good periods, and then we have times that if I start seeing signs of them slipping, I have to reel myself back in, because I want to go into action. And I want to, just haul them. They have to be ready. They've got to be ready to do it.
But when they're young, to keep it so that, I saw a mom getting ready for school a couple of years ago, and I gave her my card because I knew the girl was starting high school, and she saw that it said Maryland Heroin Awareness, and she goes, "Oh, I don't need that. She knows better than that. She knows that if she were ever to do that, I would kick her ass." And I said, "Okay, but you just close that door. She'll never come to you. She will never. If you're afraid that you're going to get your butt kicked, you're just not going to come." It took Sean a long time to come to me, and he said, "Mom, I don't know how it got this bad, this fast, and I tried to handle it on my own." Why did he try to handle it on his own? Because of stigma, because he was ashamed of himself. And you know how I got started? An adult, a parent with a child younger than me, sold him and a bunch of other teenagers pills because she had a valid prescription and she had extra ones. So you've got somebody who thinks it's okay for her. We'll never know exactly the reason, but people just think that their kids are not susceptible to this. So if you say not my child, you've also closed another door. Never ever say that, because if your child thinks that, they're not going to come to you and go, you know what? I had a migraine when I spent the night at Susie's house, and Susie's mom gave me this Oxycontin and it made me feel better. But they're never going to come to you and tell you that, because they're going to be ashamed of themselves. So open communication and just, not being judgmental, not driving down the street and going, oh my God, look at that bum. You don't know what happened to him. You have no idea. It could have been that torn ACL, so just doing your best not to be judgmental of others, and showing your young adults that you can be open, and that they're not going to get in trouble. It's just like, now it's acceptable when you know that your kids are in high school or middle school, we say to them, call me. Don't get in a car with anybody that's been drinking. If you've been drinking, call me. Don't get into a car. No questions asked. We need to do the same thing with this.
Yeah.
You're not going to get in trouble. But if they think that they're getting in trouble, that's it. And they're not going to make that phone call for somebody else either. So it has to be that. I'll jump back down again.
No, I love it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, take care of yourself, and I had to really take care of my recovery, and ego, man, edging God out. I like I said, I thought that, man, I've been in recovery since whenever, and I help all the, and I wanted to fix this. I hated to see my wife suffering, and I for a good while, man, I wanted to fix this, and I picked up the phone. I knew all these people. I'd been in, I had a program myself. I worked with the South Carolina Alliance for Recovery. I picked up the phone and sent him places. And finally one day he once again, he was over here, and he was kicked back in my recliner, and he says, these places that you've sent me to haven't helped me. And I went, bam, there you go. And I finally called another parent that had experience with this, and they told me, they said, Mike, you're too close to help him. You've got to let other people help him. And I remember the day that, like my wife and I, it was the hardest thing we ever did. But and listen, we did it with dignity and we did it with love. But we packed his backpack. We put water in it. We put resources inside of that backpack, crackers, whatever, food, and said, look, man, we're sorry, but you can't keep coming here and disrupting our life. And she and I got together on this, and like I said, right now, he's in Los Angeles. Don't ask me, long story how he got there, but he's involved with this church, and today he's doing good today, and I didn't have a darn thing to do with it. Some girl, he followed some girl out there and she left him.
That sounds about right.
Oh yeah. And he told me, he said, man, this girl just left me out here. He said, and then the rioting started, and and he was out on the street, and I don't know, he met this lady that was involved with his church, and like I said, I didn't have anything to do with it, and his recovery doesn't look anything like my recovery, right? And that's okay. And so I got out of the way, but y'all said it, keep that line of communication. I always let him know that, look, I will always talk to you. I will always love you. I will, no matter what, I'm your dad. I've had him since he was 6, but he's my son. But, always keep that line of communication open. But you ain't coming over here and staying at my house. That ain't happening. And I'm not picking up the phone to send you anywhere. You make the effort.
Find your program. Sure.
And I tell moms that all the time. At some point I go, you know what, man, we're working harder to get him in somewhere than he is. And they go, oh, and it's so true. But, if I could tell anybody anything, please, God, I know about enough just to get myself in trouble. But, find people, ask for help. I think the parents think, well, if I can get him straight or her straight, I'll be straight. And everybody has something to do with this, right? I mean, we're all accessories. At some point, when we start looking at it, we start going, "Oh, I do let him come home," or I do. I'm the one that picks up the phone, and when you start looking at it, it's almost like recovery. So
Right.
I didn't mean to rant about that, but
Well, I think Beth and I can both attest to the fact that, with our support groups, that's support is key. It's key for the families as well, not just for the person in recovery, the 12 step or whatever, whatever you choose to do, the parents and the siblings and the grandparents, and even children we have to get our minds right. We have to be healthy, because when they first start again, we're devastated. And so we're not taking care of ourselves. We're not, taking that time out. And that's key, is self-help and taking care of yourself.
And they say addiction's a family disease for a reason. But at the same time, like Mike said, you can work harder than them, but also forgive yourself. It could be part of your own recovery to find those resources and hand them to your child. There's also nothing wrong with doing that, because oftentimes it's easier to accept help than it is to ask for help. But don't, 2 or 3 resources. You don't have to find 100 and then beat yourself up because they haven't taken any. If they're not going to take them, they're not going to take them.
Right.
But if you can give them a couple, then sometimes it is okay to say, you know what? Yeah, it's easier for me to say, all right, Mom, I'll go.
Right. And I will say this too, Beth and Debbie. Another thing that I did was I had, friends of mine in recovery, and I would put those resources. I would give him those resources. So when you're out there, these guys will talk to you, or here's a meeting list, or whatever. So yeah, it's so hard. It really is.
I had a dad that called me, and I don't know who referred him to me, but he called, and he was in tears. This was about 3 weeks ago. He was in tears, and he said, "I hear you have a support group." He said, "I need help." He said, "My daughter's 30 years old." He said, "I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm thinking about just packing up, selling my house, packing up and leaving and running away from the whole situation." And for an hour and a half, I just listened. I just let him talk. I was doing stuff around the house. I just put my headset on and I let this man just talk. And by the time we were done, and I said very little, but by the time we were done, he said, "I didn't think there was anybody out there that understood what I'm going through." And, that's the whole key, is that we're not alone. We have to understand that we're not alone. And the other thing that I'd like to say is, for anybody out there listening, if there's a support group in your area or in your town, look into it. Try to get involved in it. You're not in this alone. You can't fix it all yourself. And sometimes, just when I think I've got all the answers, maybe I'll call a Beth, or I'll call, Julie or somebody, and it'd be like, they're like, "Whoa, wait a minute. You've got to stop," because we get off the hook too, so, support is huge.
Yeah, it's massive, and Todd just threw that little ticker on the bottom of the screen. McShin offers an online Zoom family support group with our certified substance abuse counselor, like every night at 6. And the fact that we live in the internet era where you can find something like that, it's kind of like, just as Mike was saying with his son, to the family members, like, what are you going to do about it too? So it's like kind of balls in your court to instead of like just as in myself, instead of wallowing in, poor pitiful me, let's go out there and get better. It just takes a lot of courage and effort.
It takes a lot, to take that first step. Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage and effort, and after that first step, the momentum just starts taking you forward, in my experience. Mike, any closing thoughts, final remarks?
No, just as we go into tomorrow and through the weekend, just thinking about these parents and thinking about my friends that I've lost, and Beth. You know, I don't know. It's it's tough, you know, and the stigma. You know, I think that's the thing that really bothers me about this whole thing is how these parents are treated in the community, how these parents are treated. Like, and I'll say this, and oh my God, maybe I'm getting a resentment, but I'll work on this. But you know, like we had this walk and we invited some folks from the faith community and pastors and stuff, and none of them came. But you know, God knew what we needed because he sent us a street preacher that said, "Hey, can I pray for you guys?"
Oh.
You know, but that part really bothers me, the way that the stigma and the way these families are treated because of the way that their child passed away. And I will just like fight for them. It's just, you know, holding a mom that has lost a child and grieving to the point that she doesn't even look like a human being. No, I mean, anything that I can do, and I definitely know what it's like to have a child in active addiction and how painful that is. And I'm gonna keep chewing on that elephant, man. And I'm not gonna be, and I'm gonna just continue to be like loud. And I like to talk a lot, as y'all can see. So, but no,
Don't
thank
we
you,
all?
guys. Thank you. Well, you know what? We've got to get out here. We've just got to continue. We've got to start following politicians around. You know, I mean, having our podcast, talking to the press, every chance, just keep beating that drum. And you know, we're all obsessive compulsive anyway, right? So just bam, 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 bam. If there's nobody on the corner, just keep beating the damn thing. You know, I mean, just that's what we're going to have to do. And I know I'm with two of them right here. So it's really been nice being with you guys tonight.
You too, Mike.
Thank you for that, Mike. Really appreciate it, buddy. Debbie, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to mimic a little bit of what Mike said as far as overdose awareness. You know, it's international, and you know that tells you how huge this is. You know, international overdose awareness, and you know if there's a vigil in your town here in Maryland, I know in Washington County there is. There wasn't. There is now. We had a young lady that started it. She's now running for mayor. There's, you know, there is one, usually there is one. So if you can go to it, go to it. Like Mike said, you know, I often think of Beth, even when it's not, you know, overdose awareness. She's my strength. You know, I bounce things off her. Before I ever started my support group, I went to her and said, you know, what do I do if a mom comes to me that has lost their child? I haven't lost my child. You know, I mean, these are things that, you know, go through my mind because I felt like I wasn't, you know, it wasn't apples to apples. You know, I definitely, I know far too many, and we've lost far too many kids with even just, you know, throughout COVID, we're losing them like crazy. So just do yourself a favor if you're out there, and it's hard to get up. It's hard to get that strength and that energy together to go out. But please go out and be with other people that understand and they know what you're going through, and they can give you that strength and that empowerment and that support to get through that next step. So anyhow, much love to everybody, and thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Beth, any closing remarks?
So again, I just want to mimic Debbie and Mike. Mike mostly with the talk about it. Talk about stigma, talk about substance use, talk about your kid that's in active addiction, talk about your child that you've lost, talk about your lost loved one. Debbie knows I talk about Sean every single day. He's on my Facebook page every single day. Our entire family talks about him every single day. I go to a vigil in my county. We have ours in March. It's huge. The first year, we thought we were going to have 100 people, maybe. State's attorney's office wouldn't even call it the first annual because he was afraid nobody was going to show up. And we had 400 people show up. And each year we have more and more people, and people that were like, no, that's not how my child died. 3 years later, we see them on that video because the families finally come forward and said, okay, yes, you're right. Because it's sad to say that an event like this can be beautiful because it's hard, and I'm going to cry. So I'm going to try not to do that. It's really, really hard. But when you know everybody else there is going through what you're going through, doesn't have, there's no stigma, there's no judgment. There is a room so filled with love. It is insane. There's a lot of online vigils that are happening this year because of COVID. So if you can't get out to go to one, join one that's online. If you have a child that's suffering, I know it's going to be hard. Join one. See what it's like, because there's a lot of parents out that are like, you know what, maybe it would be better off. And I'm going to tell you not. It's not. But again, I don't want to walk in. I want my child here, but I want him here happy and healthy and not suffering and going in and out of active addiction. But if you can see that there's parents out there that have lost children, those parents will be more than happy to help you, help yourself, and help your child. So just talk, and get involved.
Great advice. Thank you very much. And
Thank you, Beth.
just to close out, I do want to say, Kathy McGarren, we usually do these after hours ones twice a week on Tuesday and Friday with 2 or 3 during the day around 2 o'clock. Big shout out to my parents who now I have a wonderful open line of communication to. Really appreciate you guys. And you know, Beth, Debbie, Mike, your compassion and intelligence, it's just wonderful to have you guys on, and most importantly, your strength, apparently as parents of those suffering from substance use disorder. It takes a lot of courage to come on and be as transparent as you have been, and I can't thank you enough for helping out in all this capacity that you do. So thank you very much. And again, as mentioned earlier, tomorrow is International Overdose Awareness Day. So, you know, get online, Google something, try to get involved in your community. Every little bit counts in any sort of capacity, whether it's just educating yourself, awareness, donating to something, just try to get involved in some sort of capacity.
And wear purple.
Wear purple, absolutely. I really appreciate having you guys on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to having y'all on again, honestly, because it's got to happen at some point.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Alex, and thanks to Todd too.
Thank you.
Shout out to our producer Todd. You're the man,
thanks,
Todd. Mike,
right.
Debbie, Beth, have a good night.
Good
This
job,
has been Getting
guys.
the Herd After Hours. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
The McShin Foundation is Virginia's leading nonprofit full-service RCO committed to serving individuals and families in their fight with substance use disorder. Since 2004, we have been providing the tools for recovering individuals to create positive lifestyles. We aim to spread the word of recovery and educate families, communities, and government regarding substance use disorder, as well as reduce the stigma attached to it. If you or a loved one are struggling, please connect with us by calling 804-249-1845 or by visiting our website at www.mcshin.org.
Tired of waiting, lost while I'm sitting at home. Dream of a new destination, lust for something unknown. Oh, you better leave it alone. And you know, I'd rather get up and go. How long can Sometimes you gotta walk out the door. No limits, no ceiling, no ground. No pressure gonna hold me down. No stopping till I break every rule. No limits to what I can do. Nowhere is too far away. No border gonna stand in my way. No wall that I can't break through. No limits to what I can do.